Hello, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 29. This episode for the year 2015. I can't believe it. This is number 29. So if you're watching this for the first time, my name is Jay Oza, and I'm the host of this program, if you want to call that, Speech Talk Live. And we started doing this, I guess it started as a kind of we were doing this course from Coursera, and we worked with them to create this community, and then we were going to take people who were having difficulty finishing the course. So we did this weekly show at that time. We just, for no better name, we just called it Google Hangout. And we did that for 10 weeks. In the beginning, we got good response, and then, as usual, people had other things to do, so the participation dropped pretty quickly. So then at that point, we thought, Julie, myself, and at that time, Somin, who was participating regularly, we thought that we needed to continue as a way to help people out and loosely decouple it from the course itself, since we have more flexibility to do things, and this is our own little platform that we use, the community, and we just kind of made this community kind of ours now. And we do work closely with Coursera, and at that time we decided to call it Speech Talk Live, and we've been experimenting with a lot of things. We review a lot of speeches as a way to learn, and essentially as a way to think better too. I think we don't think about that. Speaking is thinking, right? And up to this point, I'm pretty happy the kind of work that we have done, and with the participation we get from Julie, who's been one of the regulars, Julie Finkelstein, and she'll introduce herself. And lately, we have Atul Vankade, who's been joining us pretty regularly. So, and again, we don't expect people to join regularly. Of course, Julie, I do, because without her, the show wouldn't be any good. So Julie, you can't take a day off, okay, a week off. So anyway, the reason that we do this show is, I keep adding more reasons, but one is that to learn. And one of the things we were discussing before we just started is that I've learned a lot. This is our 29th episode. Well, one thing I'm learning is that I'm much more comfortable doing this show. You be the judge, of course. The second is there are people who come on the show, and we actually encourage more people to come on who are kind of a little intimidated. I don't know why. I don't know. Do I look intimidating? I don't know. It must be Julie. I don't know. But anyway, it's an opportunity for them to talk to people that they don't know in a safe environment, and that's what we create here. This is a safe environment. There's no ridiculing. There is no rejection, nothing like that. And we want you to up your game. So take risks. That's part of being on the show. Take risk. It's something that if you take it outside, you may be hesitant how it's going to turn out. Here, take a chance. What's the worst that can happen? We'll kick you off the show. That hasn't happened yet. So teaching is part of it. The other one is sharing. We share speeches. And lately I've been recording a lot of speeches. Of course, I haven't shared it here. Julie's been giving me feedback on many of the speeches that I've recorded, and I give her feedback on the speeches she's been recording. We want to use this time for some new speakers to bring their speeches, because we can't use our speeches all the time. The fourth thing is support. So this is a support group. We support each other so that we can give you constructive feedback if you're open to it, right? Feedback is a very tricky thing, as we all know. You have to be ready to receive feedback. The other thing is practice. Part of it, being on the show, is to practice. Afterwards, we make this available so you can watch yourself. And every time I watch it, I'm just amazed how many mistakes I make. And it's just that I'm very critical. So I want to be careful to avoid mistake, make sure I don't talk too fast, keep my message clear. All these things become very important, and you can go back and watch it. And lastly, this is a place you come because we trust each other. So those are the reasons that we think that what we try to get out of this show. And I think so far people that have been on it have really enjoyed it, and they think that they are making progress. Remember, this is one of those things where you're not going to make a progress coming on the show once. You got to be on it quite a bit. and that's what public speaking is, and it's something that Julie and I were discussing. It's like, what is the ROI of your mother, right? That's what public speaking is. You're not going to know the ROI when you take one course or one speech. It's over a long time horizon. So that's enough of me. At this point, I'll have Julie and Atul give their quick introduction, and then we'll move into our 3-minute speech segment. Julie?
Thanks, Jay. Good morning, Atul. Great to see you. I know it's early, 7 a.m., so more power to you. I'm Julie, and today I'm a fellow mentor and student in the Coursera class. Today I want to just quickly introduce that I'm doing some vision workshops. In fact, Atul and I are collaborating on one tomorrow. And they're very useful. There was a study in Harvard Review that for one graduating class, they had half true vision and half not. And 90% of the students who did the vision reached their goals in 5 to 10 years. And the other one, you know, the odds were much lower, maybe under 50%. So today, I also want to just share 2 books with you. This one is along today's theme. It's called The $1 Million Women, and statistics show that there are like more than half of the women entrepreneurs, more than half the entrepreneurs, maybe like 60% or 70% are women, but only 3% make over $1 million. So, but you know what? My sense for this is it's good for anybody who wants to start small and think big. The other book I want to just quickly show is Jay had over the times have always talked about using constructive criticism to develop a more complete strategy. So there's a book called Red Team, and talks about integrating your enemy's perspective into your strategy. And finally, I just want to thank Jay for all his hard work, and I know that I'm a much better person, a much better speaker, and much more disciplined worker because of his program. So I want to sincerely thank him for anybody who will benefit from this indirectly and directly for his dedication and support. And discipline too. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Julie. Atul?
Hi everyone, hi Jay, hi Julie, and hi folks on the show. So I'm Atul Wankhede. I am based out of Bellevue. I work as a software engineer in the travel domain industry. Apart from engineering, software engineering, I have spent my time with my kid and my family, running around parks and all, just behind kid. I want to thank Jay, especially for his dedication and his such a good thing that he's doing, bringing up this show, giving a chance to people to talk, and you know, his dedication and Julie's dedication and thoughts they bring up, and that the books they bring up, and it's such a kind of knowledge sharing and positive. When we start our day with this show, I'm definitely like, you know, it's feels like something I have achieved in the day. So thanks again for Jay and Joey, and good to be on the show.
Atul, thanks a lot for joining, and thanks for those nice words. Appreciate it. Now I have to live up to that, which is pressure's on. Yeah, I think that's part of being on this show, where you know, the more I go back and look at it, and I'm kind of amazed. I said, wow, there's a lot of interesting stuff that we're discussing. And one of the things that I think I've told Julie, I don't know, Atul, if you were on, that the kind of discussion we have on this show is what I refer to as big talk. And most of the conversation we have in our daily life are mostly small talk, and at work, I don't consider that big talk, that's mid talk. It's just my way of saying that that's very focused on the business. Big talk are topics that kind of expand your overall thinking, and it could help you become a much better person and also a better worker, probably, at work that you do. because you're learning how to look at people in multiple dimensions rather than just focusing on just the work alone. You get to ask some difficult questions that people sometimes at work don't. So you have much deeper insight, because some of the topics like the ones that we're dealing with today, we're going to be looking at three, which I didn't actually introduce in the beginning of the show, the three real fascinating women. Sara Blakely, who founded Spanx. Sheryl Sandberg, of course, she's the CEO of Facebook, and a really a person who's trying to create this, like, helping women to lean in so that they can advance in their career and in the boardroom at the C-level suite. And then this young woman by the name of Elizabeth Holmes, who wants to basically redefine how healthcare with her blood testing. There's some controversy there, but still, you have to admire her courage and her entrepreneurship there. All these women are great entrepreneurs. So, having said that, let's just do a quick 3-minute segment, and I'll just take a brief pause and I'll introduce the 3-minute segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 29, and we're going to now move to our 3-minute speech segment. And I'll start with something that you always tend to hear people say, like, if you want to become I call it good to great speaker, you have to give a lot of speeches. And I was thinking about that. Is that really true? You know, we always get these advice from people, and they always, sometimes when you think about it, I like to dissect it further rather than just accept it, because somebody's famous, they give you advice, you think it's like gospel, you just accept it and just follow it, and sometimes it's not really true, and we're not even sure they even follow their own advice. So I was thinking about this, like somebody says, like, if you want to become a good speaker, you got to give a lot of speeches. Now, in some ways, I agree to an extent that what that does is you'll become a confident speaker. And I can give you from my personal example that I had like a lot of fear in giving speeches when I worked for the first, I guess, 10 years. I started working in '83 and till, I would say 7 years. And then I joined Bell Labs, where they had I thought one of the best Toastmasters clubs. So I joined. And what Toastmasters Club allowed me to do was, it allowed me to give a lot of speeches, and they have like table topics, you got to evaluate speakers, so I got to speak a lot. And what that did was, it made me more confident that I can speak in front of people. But I'm not sure it really made me a better speaker. I think what I wasn't really doing was, and at that time we didn't even have the technology that we have today, I wasn't going back and looking at all my speeches and seeing, let's make this, compare it with some other speeches and see what I could have done better. It was kind of like one and done, and then you got some feedback, and unless you got some really good feedback and people were willing to sit with you, you really couldn't improve that much as far as whether your message was coming across clearly. And again, it's a speaking club, so the pressure is not that high. However, if you're going to give a real life speeches, the stakes are much higher there. And I don't think it's really necessary to give a lot of speeches, but the few that you give, go back and take a look at it. Spend a lot of time looking at it, like what could you have done better? You know, do a pre-mortem before you give a speech, but then after you give a speech, like in this show, I'll go back and see what could I have done better next time if I had to give this speech. So I think you really have to study your speeches and see how you can make it better. Otherwise, what you're going to do end up doing is you're going to be confident, but you're going to be making the same mistakes over and over again. So you have to go back and try to correct some of the things from your speech. And that doesn't require you giving a lot of speeches. It just means that the speech that you give, you will have to spend a lot of time doing that deep analysis and see, re-record it. If you like, pretend like you're giving it in front of people again, the same speech, but this time you don't have the live audience, and make it better. And I think that, in my opinion, is a way you keep on improving it. And I think there might be a word called deliberate practice or something like that that might help you become a much better speaker. So just keep that in mind next time when you get that advice, like, oh, get in front of a lot of people and give speeches. you got to know a lot of things about speeches. You got to have the right audience, right? Everything has to be kind of right in many cases in order for your speech to really connect. And so anyway, that's I wanted to just kind of bring that up in this 3-minute speech segment. Julie, you're next.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, there was a book called The Talent Code. Both you and I read about it, and people might find that interesting. Today I'm going to use doing an introduction speech in a pretend practice that I am already succeeding at. And I'm going to read it mostly because this is this is my multiple times doing it, but this is actually the first time I'm drafting it. And I'm using the impromptu speech layout format. So there's an introduction, there's 2 points, and there's a conclusion or invitation. So hello, I'm Julie. I do create and lead meetings in collaborating, creating, envisioning, and actioning for your vision to come true. My vision is to model an open source where individuals can have access of my services for free in group meetings, and then to be paid for by those organizations and individuals desiring additional customized service. Today, I would like to invite you to several of the free programs I have been running. I bring with me decades of experience as a business owner and an IT professional. I created major and small systems from inception to implementation and maintenance. I am unique in that I have experience with both the data and the process side on all the aspects of the system lifecycle, which is the major steps in rolling out a system, both for process-oriented systems such as your companies' billing and operations, and information-oriented systems. These days we call them big data. Back in my days, it was called the data warehousing. Most people find me personable, productive, and playfully insightful. One manager says that I'm her personal ambassador. A client stated that I know his business, which was trucking, better than he does. I actually don't. I just know his data flows and his processes better than he does. I'm a CPCU chartered property casualty underwriter. Education and training for the overall business processes from an insurance perspective. And that I think that we all need to be literate with these processes of information management these days. Hopefully you see that my business experiences will support you in rolling out implementation visions through planning and action. I've also been trained professionally to body-mind practices for happiness and insight for myself and to share with others. I'm a certified AOBTA practitioner, which stands for the American Organization of the Body Therapies of Asia. I have practiced professionally in both Eastern and Western body and consciousness practices for over 20 years. I've studied with descendants of Jung, Feldenkrais, Rolfing, Zen therapy, and other body-mind practices. I practiced Zen and other meditational techniques for many years with different teachers. I'm also a graduate of psychology, sociology, and urban and regional planning. With my body and consciousness training, I can support your discovery of a vision that is deeply authentic and connected to your own unique personal goals. Personally, interest is the idea. I am interested in the area of collaborating on meaningful, on practical visions and rolling them out. My unique talent is to witness and help the person to bring out the larger vision and the innate talent through vision experimentation and proving and validation before rolling out a truly scaled project. My ability to see multidimensionally and systemically and through the life cycle process provides a framework for evolutionary development and revolutionary growth. My system orientation, through though seldom discussed, is the underlying pinning for integrity ensuring a successful rollout of a vision through creative and disciplined step-by-step process. So join me in thinking big, start small and start now, plan your visions, master your plan. I offer 3 programs where you can participate at the convenience of your own home. On Wednesday evening, 7:30 p.m., there's a free conference call to walk the talk where we discuss our visions and actions, and to be followed by commitments. On Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern, I host a discussion group on Google Hangout called Uncovering Our Success, Reading and Discussion. I'm rolling out a longer workshop version of Developing Your Vision, Thinking Big, Bigger, and Bigger. You can email me at julieclw999@gmail.com for further information. Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm done. I'm ready for feedback.
All right, Julie. So the quick feedback I'll give you. Again, I think we may want to take this offline. Otherwise, it may. I think overall you have a lot of good ideas there. I just think it needs to be simplified because there was just too much there, and
Okay.
I think I need to know what is the main thing you're trying to get across. I would also suggest that if you have worked with people, which you have, I would include those stories because that resonates more. Because remember, what you're telling you, this is almost like you're trying to get them to do something. And in order to get them to do something, it has to speak more to them on how you have helped others and how you can help them. And speak less about your like some of the work that you've done as far as outside what you're focusing on. The main thing is you need some real compelling stories about things that you've done with the reading thing that you do, on how this has helped people develop confidence, things like that. I think that's what it would resonate more because that's if I'm listening to this and if I have a similar problem, that's what I want to know. I really, even though your background is pretty excellent, but that wouldn't convince me, like, you have degree in this, you have worked in this and that. I'm more interested in how you can help me, and that's what I would like you to simplify it and just focus on that.
Okay, let's talk offline. Thank you.
Yeah. I think you have a lot of good things there. That was my first impression, so I'll have to look at it again to give you a much more in-depth feedback.
That'd be
But I just wanted
great.
to give you my initial feedback there. Atul?
Thank you.
Yeah, just one thing, like great, a great way of telling it in the sense that you are talking about your background and everything. So that was really great and very, for example, people can trust that background and all these things. So that's very great. But only thing I found is like the speech becomes monotonous at some point. So if you could just like sometimes change the voice or something like that, like more expression to the speech, that would really help, because if it is monotonous, then lose interest and people, I mean, I had you for some time, then I didn't, and then again I had you, like all these blips happen, at least in my case. So that's the only one feedback I had.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. I think what Atul, I think Atul, the reason that came out like that is because she was actually reading it, if I'm correct.
Yes,
And when you're reading, it's hard. I think this was sort of her first take, I think, and what she's going to eventually have to do is not to read it, but to just speak to directly.
Right.
And that's what I was telling her, that if it's simplified, then it'll become much more conversational and more impactful. That's all. And I'll work with her. I'll take that offline.
So
right,
just for your information, I think maybe I have too many purposes in there. I wanted to introduce myself, and I wanted to invite people to the session. So maybe I need to do two
Yeah,
speeches.
we'll work on that. I think you have that. Look, when it's the first one, it can't be that good. Otherwise,
Why practice?
Yeah, that's the thing. So first, once you get it on the paper, then you can improve it. So you took the right step to put something on the paper. Now you just have to make it better. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, Atul, you're next.
Yes. So my today's 3 minutes session is about how my year went, 2015. last week I was just thinking, oh, it's end of the year, and then what I have achieved and what I have not. I was just contemplating and thinking aloud, and uh, so I have come up with brief things that went very well this year, as well as things that I want to improve for the next year. So my start of the year was very fantastic. I had a trip to India, and yes, as usual, if you have a trip to your home, it's always wonderful. So start was very good. Had fun time with parents, with friends, families, going around here and there, and that was really great start. After that, I did this summer. I did a lot of hiking. I did it the previous year as well, but there were just 2 or 3 hikes. But this time I at least did 13 to 14 hikes, and I had a very good experience hiking this time. Basically we took a we every time like we used to do a very small hikes, and this year we really did a very big hike, 4 mile hike one way, which was very tiring, and the experience was like, you I realized that we have to keep going on and not to give up in between, and once you reach your end, you know you have taken the pain to go till the top, and then you see the mountains and all, and it's very fulfilling. The experience is very uh, enriching experience once you reach the top, and then that's how I realized, like in the real life as well, it's about just not giving up. You have to keep going, however tough it may seems like, but at the end you will really feel happy about, like, oh well, I did it kind of feeling that you get at the end is very rewarding. This After that, also I did a lot of read, like at least 3 books, with including and one audio book. And not to the what I want to mention about. So this is the first time I went like listening to audiobooks, and the book I chose was Banker to the Poor by Muhammad Yunus, and great book, great person. I like the ideas and how this very inspiring book I found out, and then and about the 3 books which I read, the mindset. The other book which I read was the mindset. It was very by Carol Dweck. So she was, and this book was very about, changing our attitude towards life. For example, instead of being reactive, being proactive. And what do you think about your for example, when you what are the feelings that you get, like what you tell your mind is like most of the times is like, oh, I can't do it, and instead of that, what you have to tell your mind is, I will try, or I will try sometime later. So that's very small subtle things that we keep telling unconsciously to our mind, and that's where we have to change. That's where the growth mindset comes into picture. So that's the other great book I had read. After that, I had, so in my company, there was a reorg, and I was put in a different group, and I realized that, I had to learn a lot of new things as a part of that reorg and as a part of different group. Initially, I thought, wow, it's great things to learn, but of course, we have to learn it very quickly, being on the job, and things we have to deliver very fast. So kind of pressured, kind of stressed sometime. And what I realized, like eventually I did what I had to, but just that now I realize that, okay, I should have taken less stress. I should have just focused on what I have to do, rather than, just anticipating, oh, will I be able to do it, or kind of those thoughts that go in your mind. And also in this process, I realized that, yeah, I need to up my technical skills. I need to read a lot. I need to practice some questions, some programming questions, and all those things. Some new technologies that I have to learn. So great, moving to a different world. I think it's, I read a story about, the fisherman story, where the Japanese, they wanted to have a fresh fish to the people, and so when they go out to sea and bring fish, they used to have a whale in the fish, so that the fish are always active. So it looks like in the real life also, we have to keep moving from our sweet spot, or our comfort zone, and just like having that whale around us, so that, we keep on constantly moving ahead rather than sticking at one place. And so quite a great lessons learned this year. And last but not the least, joining J shows, and of course Julie's the other show. This was I think this is very. I think I should have done that before, but now since I did it anyway, so I love being on the show, and I hope next year also I'll continue. And it's great improvement which I see during both the Speech Talk Live show and other group which I'm doing. I see improvements giving during my meetings, the way I talk, the way because I have been very now I the way I was not conscious before and now I'm conscious what I'm saying, how I am saying, and all these things. I think this is where the beginning is about just knowing what should about trying improving or just being conscious that okay this could have been said in a better way or uh, this could have been reflected in a better way how I should say so amazing experiences amazing I think I'm improving and next year probably I have a lot of other goals to achieve apart from that I think I have a lot of things to say but looks like my 3 minutes are up so I'll probably stop here thanks Jay.
Yeah, yeah, that was excellent. I like the way you put the whole speech together. So there's an example of how to use the 3 minute to talk about something that's personal, and you pretty much kind of summarize your whole year on some of the things that you did uh, that 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 you did as far as your trip was concerned, as far as the work, as far as your personal development, and some of the things that you want to. Maybe that's something we can start off in the new year. What are your things that you want to do as far as your speaking goals are concerned? I think that might be a good way to start
Yeah.
next year on January 8th. Like, what are the speaking goals that each of us have? So that's a good point. I just learned something for that we can. And I agree with you that I haven't read that book. You said you had 3 books. You gave us 2 of them, Banker to Poor. Then you gave us Mindset. I've read Mindset by Carol Dweck. That's a great book. And what
Yes.
was the third book?
Third, that was oh I forgot the name, but the Enlightened Mind. That was the other book I had read.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Enlightened Mind. Okay, I haven't read that. Yeah, so because Carol Dweck's book is really good. It's about so this part of being on the show is like that, right? Growth mindset. The other term she uses what when you don't have a growth mindset? What is that called?
uh, yeah, that's what I tried to remember in that speech which I gave. It was one is growth mindset,
Fixed.
fixed mindset. Yes,
Fixed mindset. Yeah. So part of being on this show is part of being in a growth mindset where you're constantly growing, and she gives really good examples on kids who are really smart, but they're not going to push themselves.
right.
And it's something you deal with. You have children, right? You're married and have children.
Yes, yes, I have a kid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's going to be very important because your kids, like my son, got upset this week because he didn't do well on one test,
Hmm.
and I had to talk to him. I said, "Listen, just as long as you're growing, that's what counts, not like how well you do on one test." So that book is very helpful when you talk to kids and even adults. I talk to myself. Saying, am I growing? And sometimes it's not going to go well. Like Julie just gave her speech, and that's a growth
Yeah,
because see if somebody says, you know what, I don't even need to do it, then you're getting into that fixed mindset. When you bring something new which isn't perfect, not it's never going to be perfect, but at least you're willing to try it and see how it goes. That's part of being in a growth mindset rather than saying, I don't need to get on this show. Why bother, Who cares? So, Julie, that was very courageous of you to bring that up because that's how you grow, by the way. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I do. I think a lot of my speeches, that's how I look at it, and I don't expect them to be good, but I expect to learn from it. So, okay, so at this point, I'm going to take a brief break, and we'll move.
Jay, can I just say 2 quick things?
Yeah.
One is it was really a growth mindset for me because throughout my whole career, I never did preparation. All the times for homework and staff meetings, I never prepared. So this is a huge step for me. The other thing is I just want to invite Atu to think about leadership skills. When you participate as you're helping me with the curriculum and the agenda, you're really actually stepping up to lead, and I really just want to honor that for you. Thank you.
thanks, Julie.
Yeah, so one other thing I'll point out now that Julie got me thinking, she always does this.
Hmm.
She always makes you think that speaking is leading, right? Because it's interesting. I'll just take a little tangent. So I'm currently working on a book, which I've been saying now for a long time. At some point, I'm going to say, I finished my book. But until then, I'm working on it. Okay. Actually, it's pretty close. My first draft should be done by the end of this month. Uh, but one of the things I created is one chapter because I just realized like how difficult speaking is, and I have all these different things I call it, like why speaking is so difficult, and one of them was like speaking is leading, right? That when you're speaking means the other people are listening. It's your time to lead. So whenever you're speaking, you have to think of yourself as a leader, and leaders, they have good listening skills, but they also are talking a lot too. Leaders do speak a lot, and when they speak, people listen. Sort of like that commercial about E.F. Hutton. I don't know if you remember that. Okay, I'm going to take a brief pause, and then we'll get to our first segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 29. And this first segment, we're going to review a speech that was given by one of female billionaires. Her name is Sara Blakely, and she's a founder of this, I guess it's women's underwear, if I'm not mistaken, hosiery business called Spanx, which you may have heard of. And she gives a speech to some organization, and this speech was recorded, I think, several years ago. And I like this speech because what she's doing in this speech is she's kind of giving her entrepreneurial journey on how she started with this idea. And it was an idea that was born out of her personal need. That, and again, I'm kind of a little bit out of my league here, trying to explain about women's undergarments. I'm not an expert on this, but after watching the speech, I think I know quite a bit about this thing that I didn't even know before. But anyway, she realized that the existing, pantyhoses were just not comfortable, and she kind of like cut it and turned it into like a pants. And again, we'll have somebody else explain this in more detail. And she's kind of describing her story, and she decided that there was a need here. There was nothing like that available. So she's kind of showing us how this idea, taking this her entrepreneurial journey from idea conception all the way to the point where she has a real company. And just listening to it, I was kind of inspired, and it kind of gave me an idea like that we always see these people being successful after they are already billionaires. But when they start out, it's just basically just a dream in a way. And I like what she had to say in that speech, where I think she had attended a speech given by somebody, and the guy said that there are no bad ideas. And he said in 4 words, he said, teenage mutant turtle, something like that. Teenage, I wrote it down here. Teenage something. Somebody will figure that out. And that made a lot of money. Somebody made a lot of money, and she came up with something like that. She said she had 2 words called footless pantyhose, I believe. That was her 2 words. Yeah, footless pantyhose. And who had ever thought of it? Prior to her, nobody had even thought of that. And then she goes on to describe all the different parts or steps through her entrepreneurial journey, like getting a patent, then getting somebody to manufacture this Spanx undergarments for women, and she kind of then has to do with so now she has it. Now how do you get it to companies? Like she just made cold calls to this company called Neiman Marcus, and she went and met with the lady, and like you really realize like what it takes to start something and to get it to each point along. There are all these different obstacles you have to overcome, and the way she describes it, it's her personal story. She's very good at telling the story. There's a lot of humor in it, and I guess you can laugh about it. But even if she wasn't successful, you still have to laugh about it, and you kind of relate to her. That if you were even a man or a woman watching her, you get inspired, thinking that if you want to start anything, and it's kind of what we're doing here with this show. At some point down the line, I can say, hey, when I started, there were only 2 people on. Julie and Atul, and look at it now. We got like millions of people watching this show. So you guys will be part of the story. And she talks about all these different names in there, like Sam and Ted and all the people that helped her get to where she is. And I found this speech very inspiring, and it was a very engaging speech. She's a great storyteller. It's a story. Of course, what she's talking about is female undergarments, but it could apply to just about anything. This is not just something that only the women should look at. I think the men should look at this too. Just substitute that for maybe you can come up with I think there's a similar story for Under Armour, right? That's how that guy created this Under Armour that's so popular with men now. He basically took the idea from women's garment and he turned it into men's garment, something like that. She's very funny, and I thought this was an excellent speech, and it had a great message, and it was delivered well, and you can tell that she was really connecting with her audience. Julie, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, so anybody who can contribute $10 million for charity, I have to admire. She was, before even starting her own business, she was already the top salesperson. So she came in with a lot of communication or speaking skills, right? I just thought she was the most personable of the three. And you can see her creativity, her sense of humor. And there was a lot of like neat instructions in there, like how she came up with the with the name Spanx. She gave us the idea that, first of all, which is what you always say, a single word is always more memorable than a long phrase. The second thing she said was the word K has a lot of resonance. And then she said, a new word is more memorable than an old word. So even in that segment of like a few seconds, she gave us so much information. And the whole speech was packed with that kind of ingenuity, can-do attitude, and innovation. I just thought that was great. The other thing I'd like to point out is she kind of modeled for me anyways, the fake it till you make it attitude, At one point she said there was she and her husband, her boyfriend, was sitting at the kitchen table. Someone calls in and wants to place an order, and she says, let me transfer you to the shipping department. And she passed the phone. Just a great speech. Again, personable, wonderful hand gestures. And she also she underscored the importance of connections and friends, because when she went to Neiman Marcus, she said she called everybody to go and buy it. And also she kind of mentored the gender issue, right? Because the person who sponsored her was a father of 2 daughters. And so I guess the whole point is, if you have a can-do attitude, you're ingenious, and you don't give up, things will happen, I think that was very inspiring. Thank you.
Atul, what did you think of her story and her speech?
Definitely. For example, I like basically it's inspiring. I found it like she's connecting well with the people, with the audience there, and thirdly, she's talking from her heart. Like, she's not making up things which I see, and she's giving, basically telling her journey, which is with pure honesty. The other thing what I noticed is that at one point when she had the product, she basically shipped it to Opera so that she can talk about it if she likes it. So what I really like, being a marketing person, she knew exactly how to sell the product. So basically she wanted to let out to people, and so what she did was she sent it to Opera. So that's like if she likes it and she brings her to her show, it means it is made available to a lot of folks. So very nice way of marketing or tactics and different way of different approach. Like we know door-to-door marketing. She initially she did selling the fax machine. She is a great salesperson, and giving this example that she sent it to Opera, and then things kicked off. And then when she came, she just pretended that she has employees by calling her friends and all. So uh, I like how she on the fly, like fake it and make it, which Julie already said, like kind of approach what she followed, and definitely great innovative idea, and wow, and really great. I mean, nice inspiring talk. That's...
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, one thing I'll point out is, and this is just this woman had a lot of skills. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. Her problem was that she was not lacking confidence. She was not lacking, like Julie just pointed out. This woman has a real good communication skills. She was in sales. She just transferred it. What she was missing is she needed an idea and a mission, and now she married the two, and she used all her skills that she had already developed. And sometimes you kind of miss out on that, right? Like somebody must be watching this and saying like, oh, but like how can I do it? That's the part she's not saying, that this woman already had a lot of skills prior to coming up with this idea. Then she said, oh, you know, she talks about she didn't make it into law school, but she had the stick-to-itiveness, the persistence, the gumption. All of those skills are now being transferred to her idea, and she was able to take it incrementally. And the other thing I'll point out is that it comes through very clearly. She's a very likable person, and never miss the fact that part of the success has a lot to do with likability. And you can tell her when she's describing, she's making this woman is trying to get people to do things for her, okay? But she doesn't have the money. She's doing some things on her own. And the other thing I'll tell people who are watching this, and even to you, when people see you working hard, you become very attractive to them. Like they'll just say, oh my God, this person is like so, not like not the word possessed, but like is so focused and dedicated. It becomes addictive. After a while, you kind of think like, my God, I better help this person out, because if he's so passionate about this, I better be part of this, her team, or please do anything that I can to help her out. And that's what I got from when she was talking about her journey, each step along, like even getting on Oprah's show. They invited her because Oprah liked her story. If you remember when she's talking about that Oprah typically just mentions the product, but in her case, she made an exception of having her come there because she's in this $2 billion industry, which is male dominated, and here's this woman who's got this hustle. It kind of reminds Oprah, she reminds her of herself, like this is what I had to go through. And that's what makes her story really compelling, that in everything you're trying, there are already going to be established players that you're going to have to knock off. And you can't just give up. You're just going to have to fight it through, but at the same time, enjoy the journey, because that's your story. And that's something that we should not lose focus of, that in her case, it succeeded. But even if it hadn't succeeded, because all along she could have failed at many different points, right? In her case, it succeeded, but this is what it takes to succeed. That you got to have a mission. You cannot. You got to be willing to plod along even with setbacks and figure out some creative ways of doing things. Like just Julie just mentioned, when somebody called, the customer out there only cares about your solution. They don't care about the mess that's inside, right? Like all companies have a mess. The customers don't need to see that. And when she says that you have to fake it till you make it, that's what I kind of understand that to be. That other people just need to see the way they want to see you. You don't have to tell them about like, oh, I'm a total wreck. You know, I don't have any money. This idea may not go anywhere. They don't need to know any of that. That's irrelevant. They just want to know, do you have something that can solve my problem? And if you can, that's all they care about. Don't bring them anything else that they don't care about. Julie, any closing thoughts?
I like what you said too. Is that I really was impressed with what you said when you said, and I wrote a big note. Is that you need an idea or vision with the skill set, and that's when you launch off. So another woman who also did something similar, her name is Byron Katie. And she was already a successful real estate salesperson, $1 million income. And then she had a nervous breakdown. And then she transferred all her knowledge into this consciousness process called the work. And she's even bigger than ever. But she already had the skills. But the mission makes it big. Because when you have a mission that's bigger than you, then you can go big. So that's what I want to add. Thank you.
Yeah, it is contagious when you have that mission, and that's what that speech that you give that mission needs to come out. So we're going to work on that, Julie. Atul, any closing thoughts?
No, just that. Definitely, you had a great point at marrying the skill set to the mission. Amazing, like. Thanks.
Yeah, that is a point that now that I just made it kind of like it was kind of quick, but now that you guys both mentioned it, it's something you have to always do an inventory of. Like, you have a lot of skills, Atul. So does Julie. Julie's got this vast experience, right? And you got to take that. And I think sometimes what's really missing in somebody taking it to the next level is that idea and that mission, saying that now I know what I want to do, but I have all these the prerequisite skills that I've developed for many, many years. Apply it to that, boom, take it to the next level, and enjoy the journey. And that's how people make it. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take a brief break, and we'll move on to our next segment.
Jay?
Yeah.
I have to leave for a meeting, so
Okay, yeah, sure. Atul, well, thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you. Happy New Year, and enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you January 8th if you can make it, okay?
Definitely, sir. And thanks a lot, and yes, have a happy holidays, happy New Year, and have a great Christmas to both Jay and Julie. See you next year.
Okay, take care. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. All right, so we'll take a quick break, and then we'll move on to our next segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode 29, segment number 2. In this segment, we'll look at another famous female billionaire, and her name is Sheryl Sandberg. She's, of course, the chief operating officer at Facebook. And this was a TED Talk she had given, I think, in 2010. And I think out of all the 3 speeches that we are reviewing today, this one was the best put together. And she's not talking about her personal journey. Her role here is that I've made it, but I, as a person who has made it now, it's time for me to help other women make it. Here's something I'm seeing that I'm not too happy about. It's not acceptable to her that there are not that many women that are moving up the corporate ladder in the numbers, that the numbers are just not that high. And she basically has her mission here that, listen, I've made it as one of the top executive at one of the most dynamic company called Facebook. And also she had, remember, come from Google, and she had all this excellent experience. She worked with Larry Summers, so she worked in the State Department, or Treasury. So she's got this, and she has, of course, a Harvard degree and all of that, right? So, but here, I think this was a courageous speech because she's saying that, yes, I made it, but there are a lot of things that I see that I'm not happy about. And she gives like 3 reasons that women need to, first she identifies the problem, and then she gives the fix. And then at the end, she's pretty realistic that I don't expect things to be changing that quickly, but I just don't like to just be quiet about it, because the future generation, there's a lot of potential out there, and women need to know about this so that they don't make the mistakes that, even though we have a lot of things going for us, but there's a lot of things that we're still not accomplishing, especially at the leadership role in politics and business in many areas where women are just not advancing as rapidly when they should be. Because let's face it, there are more women who graduate from colleges, so they got all the education they need. So what is keeping them behind? And she gives 3 reasons here. One of them, she's saying that women need to sit at the table, uh, that women need to don't like take a back seat to anybody. They earn their right. Let's say if a woman gets a college degree, she works at a company, she's earned a right to sit at the table and even take risks. I think that's what she's saying. Take risks. The other part that she mentions, which I thought was very interesting, is that the second point was make your partner a real partner, and this is something that a lot of men don't realize. It not me, of course. Um, that that there's a partnership. A marriage is a partnership, and a lot of women kind of get the short shrift in the sense that they end up doing a lot more work. They are not only doing the work at work, but then they have to do another work when they get home, and that just tires them out. And I can tell you one thing, because I've taken care of my daughter and my son when I've worked from home, and sometimes it is a lot of work. I mean, taking care of kids is not easy. In fact, it completely tires you out. You have to deal with all kinds of nonsense that you don't when you have to deal with nonsense at work, but believe me, you can deal with that. Nonsense you have to deal with your children sometimes is really hard, okay? And I can tell you, when women, I know exactly what women go through, because I used to go to PTA meetings, and I was sometimes the only male there, which was interesting. The other thing she points out is don't leave before you lead. So that's another interesting point. So this is sort of like the clarion call that, yes, we're making progress, but the progress is just not good enough. And women need to, it's a message she wants to send out to the women out there, young women. And, I have a daughter who just started work, and I tell her that, some of these advice are good. The one thing I'll also point out is, so her speech, let me just do a quick, I think this is another excellent speech because it's really well put together. It's really well delivered. There is a humor in it. It's a very personable speech. She's talking about her observation. So this speech is a little bit different from the Sara Blakely speech we looked at, where she's just talking about her journey. This one is a risky speech because here, what Sara Blakely is talking about, the risks she encountered, and she can couch it in all kinds of ways to make it really resonate. What Sheryl Sandberg is doing is a lot different. This is trying to persuade people. So there's risks that she's taking, because some people are not going to take this speech well, saying that, wait a second, who is this woman coming here and telling us all this? I'm sure there are men out there who really don't want to hear all this stuff, right? Because they don't see this as a problem. Sometimes men don't see this as a problem. So she's taking I think she's taking the most risk here, because this is also a little political here too, the speech. The one thing I will point out is that I think her definition, and again, I'd like to get Julie's point on it, that are women measuring themselves and how much they rise in the corporate ladder? Because another thing that I'm seeing, and I think Julie just brought up that book about $1 Million Women, I think that a lot of women don't want to deal with the corporate mess. It's just that they're just not, that's not their strength. And I don't know why we want women to be judged like, unless they're rising in the corporate ranks, that's when they're really made it. Because I see a lot of successful women entrepreneurs now, and many of them are solopreneurs. Because when I look at social media, there are so many women doing fantastic work, like on Pinterest, on Instagram, and I watch all these shows, and these women are doing, like, they're just kicking butt as far as what they're doing. So they have all the talent, but what I hear also what they're saying is that they all left the corporate jobs because they just didn't like to deal with all that mess. So I'm kind of a little bit not sure about this, that what she's saying, that is this the way the women are measuring themselves, that they have to rise in the corporate ladder, or do they measure themselves as far as like, hey, I don't need to rise in the corporate ladder. I can have a good career, a good entrepreneurial career on myself, starting some kind of business, whether it's coaching or whatever, and I'm making good money. But why do I need to deal with the corporate where there are so many things that I'm just not good at, and I don't want to be good at that? So that's the part that she doesn't really discuss in this speech. She's just saying that women need to rise, and I agree with that. But Are women, all women really want to do that? That's the question. And now with this internet, women can carve out their own niche. They don't need to go through the traditional route of, I'm going to join IBM and then wait for another 20, 30 years before I become the CEO. There are very few C-level positions out there. And a lot of women don't want to wait that long. These young women today are real go-getters, and they see so many opportunities where they don't want this traditional path of going into through the corporate route or even the political route. You have the power to reach to your audience directly. Why do you need some, some daddy to help you out or some company out there? They don't want that. They want to be able to go directly, and they have that opportunity today. Julie, what did you think? What are your overall view on it? Because this speech was a little different in a sense that she's talking about some real problem that exists, and I just would like to get your take on this.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak a little bit about to her speech, and then I think I'd like to take a little time to answer your question. So I thought this was a very good speech in terms of being personable. It's in the medium. It's the middle one. I think what I really like about her speech was that she in the speech she showed her success, but she also showed her vulnerability, and then she linked it to the social issue. So in terms of speeching, and the thing I like is, like, I don't know if she talked about this in the example in the speech, but I remember that it was being like a really heartfelt example about her negotiation with Zuckerberg. So basically, she, like all women, she was going to under-negotiate. But she came up with this argument. She says, you want me to be a tough negotiator for you, and this is the only time you have to negotiate with me, so I have to demonstrate my skills. She came up with a great deal, basically, but she had to use your words, she has to pivot. She has to pivot from being in that gender kind of attitude, well, what will I do to make the deal, to how can I be the best negotiator for that which I'm going to undertake, and use those skills to negotiate for herself. And the other thing, and I'll say that I'll segue into your question, is she talked about success and sacrifice. And I think in some ways that's what you are alluding to, is high-level success requires sacrifice. Just like being a wife and a mother requires sacrifice. So you can be both, or you could be one or the other, but there are sacrifices to be made. So to come into your question is, do women really want to be corporate success, or do they just want to be successful as entrepreneurs? I think that not every woman is a Sheryl Sandberg, right, or Carliona Fiona. But there are women out there like that, and their powers and their skills can benefit society. And some men are really not happy in the power position. Maybe they have a more nurturing instinct, but right now they're denigrated for their skills and talents of being able to nurture and appreciate and support and create a very healthy human environment. So this idea of choice and sacrifice, I would like to take it out of the female position and look at it as a human position. I think, as I mentioned in the beginning of the book, is even as entrepreneurs, even though there are a few women who are highly visible and they are quote-unquote kicking ass, that many women are way below that glass ceiling. And yes, to answer your question, the way I hear it is some women just want to do a little solopreneur business while taking care of their family, so they are not looking for big money. And I think that's a valid choice. But the underlying assumption here is there are equal number of women and men who want to reach for that high level success. So why given that women are 51% of the 52% of human population, why is there only like 3% at the C-level jobs? And they are hard, it requires a lot of sacrifice. But why is there so distorted representation? And I would submit to you that there are a lot of men there who are not happy running the rat race. They may be happier having an entrepreneurial business and being able to take care of the family and somehow creating a choice that's satisfying for them. I think society is equally damaging to those men because of the social stigma that's involved with men not reaching for the most money or the most success or the most fame. So her position is gender-based, looking from the female perspective. I would submit to you that there's a mirror position for the male. So as a human choice, like Elon Musk was talking about, as a human being, what is the position we want to place ourselves that maximizes individual happiness and human potential?
Yeah. So I just think that there's several points here. I think that women today have choices, a lot more choices than they did in the past, right? They know the landscape much better than the women did in the past, right? Past, you had to kind of play this one game. And I think a lot of women do not want to play the game that's been designed by men. Like, once you go into the corporate side, there is only one game there. Okay, there is no like the men play one way, the women play one other way. There is only one way of playing, and that game has already been, been designed. That's how you got to play it. And I just am currently finished a book by Jeffrey Pfeffer. He's a professor at Stanford. He wrote a book called The Leadership BS. Excellent book. And after reading that book, I think I have a much better idea on what it takes to get to the top. And everything that you hear about leadership is total BS, because what the leaders do to get to the top is not what they're going to tell you after they get to the top. And everybody who gets to the top, they play by a pretty brutal rule that's not well defined. But then when they get to the top, they always write books like Jack Welch. Like I have his book right here, right here. Jack Welch. See this book? This book right here, Jack Welch, right? All of these books are always telling you what you should do, but they don't tell you unless somebody has really analyzed it on how they got there. And when you focus on it with a microscope, you find out that what got them there is not what they're telling you how to get there, and you'll never get there. And I think a lot of women are realizing that they just don't want to play that game that's been rigged, and they don't want to play it that way. They're not geared for that. They're not even wired that way to play the game. And now they have a lot of opportunities where they can play the game that they like to play. And yes, they're not going to become the CEO of a company, but you know what? They can become a CEO of their own company. And what's wrong with that, right? Like Sara Blakely did that, right? She basically became a CEO of her own company. And then the next speaker we're going to look at is Elizabeth Holmes. She became a CEO of her own company. And one thing I'll point out is that Sheryl Sandberg does not really give a rule that's out there. And this something happened in the NFL. NFL actually is a good microcosm of how corporations should behave, right? And NFL had a real problem with there were few minorities in the front office and in coaching positions, even though the players are predominantly African Americans. So there was this owner who took upon himself from Pittsburgh Steelers. His name was Rooney. I forgot his first name. Not Andy Rooney. It was some other Rooney. And he came up with this Rooney rule. And what the Rooney rule says is that when there is a position open, like let's say a coaching position opens up for a team, they have to interview at least one or two African American candidates. Now you might say, well, they're just kind of going to go through the motion. Yeah, in the beginning they probably did, but that rule has been credited with leveling the playing field for a number of reasons. Like the New York Jets have an African-American coach. His name is Todd Bowles. Now, Todd Bowles may not have gotten the job. And again, sometimes the system is fair, unfair. You have to try to make it as fair as possible. He might not have gotten the job. He has interviewed it. He's been a what do you call it, offensive or defensive coordinator for many years. That's usually a stepping stone to get to the next level, to get the head coaching position. Now, he may have interviewed with a number of teams in the past and he didn't get the job. He might have been the second choice. But what it did was it gave him the experience and what it was like talking to the owners, developing their network. So eventually the word starts spreading and he becomes much more visible. And now he's the head coach of the New York Jets. These people are qualified. They just don't get the opportunity. So this is the rule that I think that Sheryl Sandberg could have mentioned, that let's say a CEO position opens up or a C-level position opens up in any companies. There should be this, not an enforced rule, but it should be a rule that should be codified in the company's manual, that they will look at several women candidates, and they may not get the job, but at least they will start developing their network and the word will start spreading. Because, you know, when you interview for a job, the word gets around. People know who you are, saying, oh, she was interviewed for this job. She was interviewed for this job. And eventually, after a few these interviews, somebody will see the value in you. And remember, they're already doing great work, that they will get the opportunity to get that C-level position. And unless there's a rule like that, I really don't see how women are going to crack more of these C-level positions. So that's just my opinion, and I'm just taking this from the NFL. Any thoughts on that, Julie?
Yeah, I definitely there's things organizations to do, but she started at the very beginning of the speech to say that there are many factors to this issue. But today's speech, I'm going to focus on what the individuals can do. And so she's kind of saying, you know, in Covey talks about the circle of influence versus the circle of concern or power. I think she's focusing on the circle of influence. Now, because she's such a public figure, there is some controversy whether she is blaming the individual for the problem. But I don't think she's doing that. I think she's truly looking at it as how can you empower yourselves, you know. But I really do, from my point of view, I understand what you're saying, that women maybe choose to play their own games. But my point of view is, what is good, I've been joking with my husband in this, is what is good for the goose is good for the gander. And we need to look, and I think my argument with this is not so much what the corporations can do, because she already scoped it out, so she's not going to do that. My question is, how can men support that, us individuals? You know, how can they benefit from what she's saying, rather than just focusing on the women? That's my thing.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure we can talk about this but we got to close this out. So this was a good discussion, and I think it was a very important speech because I personally feel that women are highly competent as far as education is concerned, experience is concerned, and sometimes these rules, just asking them to do all these things sometimes may not be the right way to do it. Maybe they need a different kind of a rule altogether, like they instituted in the NFL. And it's not perfect, but at least it's a step in the direction that a lot of these women will get the profile and attention that they're not going to get if they have to do all the work themselves. Because the path is really long, as you know, to get to the top in a corporate environment. You know, we have few success stories that we see, like Carly Fiorina, IBM, Mary Barra from GM. I mean, those are good examples, but there are just not that many of those. And when you look at the number of women that are coming out of college, going on for advanced degrees, they should be making, the representation should be much higher, and it's just not right now. All right, so we'll take a quick break, and we'll move on to our last segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode 29. In this segment, we're going to review a speech made by this young woman named Elizabeth Holmes, who's actually a billionaire. And she started a company called Theranos, which is a blood testing. So she has this grand vision, essentially to completely redefine healthcare. And she started this company actually right after when she was a student at Stanford, and she dropped out, I believe, after her freshman and sophomore year. She went and wanted to do research for this one professor, and she learned a lot of things there. And then she said, "You know what? I'm going to go strike it out on my own." So here's a many people kind of compare her to the female version of Steve Jobs. In fact, she kind of even dresses like Steve Jobs. She wears the same clothes, the black turtleneck with the jacket with one button. So she's got the look of a very successful person like Steve Jobs. And she also is on a mission. And her mission is very noble, actually, that healthcare has a real problem. That a lot of times the way healthcare works is you only start knowing about a problem after you start seeing the symptom. And she's saying that that's just not acceptable, and it's also not. It leads to high cost, and sometimes it's not even the most effective way to treat it. Why couldn't we treat it much earlier? And one of the ways to do that is this blood testing uh, device or equipment that they're produced, where you can get a blood tested with just like a prick from your finger, and it can get tested so you can identify all sorts of problems, whether you're pre-diabetic. And right now, it's very cumbersome. You have to give like a vial of blood if you ever gotten blood tested, anything. And with her, if her method really works, and there's some question about that, whether it really works or not. And lately, there's been a lot of controversy about that. But that doesn't diminish as far as her entrepreneurial mission is concerned. That she basically puts a scare in the healthcare industry. And healthcare industry, the reason why our healthcare is such a mess in this country is because it's a very profitable business. We all think healthcare is about saving people's lives, yes, but it's a real profitable business, and sometimes profit tends to trump the actual care part. The profit trumps caring, okay? And what she's trying to say is that people just don't have the information. Like I think she basically uh, access, like after you get a blood test, sometimes it's not even possible to get that information. Like, what did the blood test show? You don't even know how to interpret it. So she's saying that access gives you the knowledge. Knowledge will give you an ability to engage. So you're making your own decision. So the power is shifting away. Which, if her thing works, nanotainer that she has, and the testing that they do at the different points, decentralized points, then you get to decide. And that becomes a threat. So lately, you're seeing a lot of resistance here by the blood companies, people who make this equipment, and even a lot of physicians out there. Uh, uh, because let's face it, healthcare is a real profitable business for many companies. I mean, how many insurance companies have you heard lose money? It just doesn't happen. The whole system is so geared where they can just mint money. If I had to start a business, I would start an insurance company, because you can really make a lot of money from that, because you already got a pool of people that are healthy. You eliminate all the people that are not healthy. How could you ever lose money in that business? So her solution is through technology. That technology will fix this problem. And right now, the only test, from what I read just recently, there was an article in the Business Week, is the herpes test. The other test, evidently, there's some controversy whether their equipment is actually being used. But we're not going to get into that. That's something that has to be sorted out over time. But the fact is that many of these things, when you first start out, are not perfect. So I think that a lot of the bad press could be the result of a lot of jealousy and a lot of threat that many companies are realizing that this company poses to them. And overall, the amount of funding that they've received makes her a multi-billionaire, actually. As far as her speech is concerned, Okay, this is what I call a very content-rich speech. There's a lot of content here. She's explaining the healthcare that exists and how it can be made better. Is she a dynamic speaker? I would say not really. She speaks pretty much in a monotone throughout the whole speech. She has that air of somebody who's, and again, it could be her style, and it's kind of hard to change it. If I had to give her advice, I would say vary your voice a little bit. Her voice is like pretty much monotonous in this entire speech. And even when she tries to use humor, it doesn't really, she's not that comfortable with it. So she uses humor, but she doesn't do a lot with it. And but one thing she does have is she really believes in her message, and you can sense that she's really serious. She's really serious about this topic, and maybe that's what she's trying to convey to the audience, that listen, this is a real problem. But I just feel like her message is excellent. I just think that her delivery could have been a little bit more dynamic, more conversational, so that I could like really relate to her, because sometimes she does get into the weeds a little too much, and she could have made it a little bit more simpler. If she had tweaked her speech a little bit like that, I think it would have been more effective. But overall, I completely got the message. I completely got her mission. And the one thing she kept on saying repeatedly, I don't know if you may notice it if you're watching this, that access to actionable health info at the time it matters. So if there's a one key message, is that right there, access to actionable health information at the time it matters. That is the main idea of the speech. Julie, what did you think of Elizabeth Holmes' speech?
Yes, I totally agree with you that the speech could use some improvement. And it was given to the TED Med Society, so it was a different group of audience. However, I think she could have just simplified it, as you said. I would just say that resistance is to be expected. There's a book by this Harvard professor Kuhn, Kuhn, called The Social Structure of the Scientific Revolution. And basically it says that whenever you go through like a major change, an underlying change, you can expect resistance. So I applaud her for what she's doing. And I like the access to actionable information at the time it matters. I would think that you might say it's a little long, but otherwise it's great message. So yeah, that's what I had to say. Thanks.
Yeah, that's her. That's her. I mean, I'm not coaching her, so, but that's the. I mean,
yeah, I know that.
I watched this number of times. I think she had very good statistics to back it up. The only thing that I'll mention is, like, if you're going to compare her to Steve Jobs, which I did because many people have compared her to Steve Jobs. So if Steve Jobs was giving the speech, how would he have given the speech? That's what and if Steve Jobs was giving this speech, he would have said things like, isn't this amazing that you can get your a blood test done with a prick of, with a finger prick? Isn't that amazing? Like, he would be saying that, and people would say, wow, that is amazing, right? She doesn't do that. She doesn't like what she's talking about is really amazing stuff here. Imagine that you can find out that before you going into hospital, they can find out that you have certain problems. Isn't that what you want? Isn't that what this healthcare is all about? Where you get to decide. Steve Jobs would have given this speech in a totally different way. And she had that opportunity. So even though she might be a female version of Steve Jobs, but when it comes to communication, she's not Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs would have taken the speech and everybody would be talking about Theranos. That's how good Steve Jobs was as far as really conveying it to the audience, what the main message is. She does it, but it's not like Steve Jobs. Let's just put it that way. No. So that's the only thing I'll point out, that he's the gold standard when it comes to marketing. She's kind of marketing because this company is not like at prime time yet. There's still a lot of the challenges they face. But Steve Jobs was in this mode. He would have completely, done an amazing job with this material that he had in front of him.
Great.
And any closing thoughts?
Thank you. Thank you for your whole efforts for the year, and I look forward to collaborating with you next year.
All right, yeah, let's talk about it and some of the things we can do better. But overall, I enjoyed all your help this year, and we had really nice discussion. It's time to review them and make sure it leads towards some things that adds impact to people. All right, Julie, thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Enjoy the holidays and Happy New Year.
I'm sure we'll be talking. So.
All right, yeah,
thank
we'll
you.
be talking, but this is
Okay.
formally.
Oh yes, you too.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Bye.